9 out of 10 bottles labeled full synthetic are refined mineral oil in a legal costume. A 1999 lawsuit settlement let Hydrocracked Petroleum carry the synthetic label overnight, and that API certification stamp on every bottle, it confirms minimum threshold, not quality. I tested 11 of the top-selling synthetic oil brands, pulled drain samples, sent them to an independent lab, and only one survived its full claimed interval. The rest broke down early, some dangerously so. One oil at number 2 is quietly destroying a part that costs more than a lifetime of oil changes. And the number 1 pick did something no other brand could even come close to. Let's get into it. Starting at number 11, we have SuperTech Full Synthetic, Walmart's house brand. I pulled a drain sample from a customer's 2019 Hyundai Tucson at 3,500 miles into what was supposed to be a 5,000-mile interval. He'd been running SuperTech for years because it carries the same APISP certification as oils costing 4 times more. Same stamp, quarter of the price. So why pay more? On paper, the logic is bulletproof. In the lab, it fell apart. Viscosity had already sheared below its stated grade. Iron content was elevated well past what I'd expect at that mileage, even in a hard-driven engine. The additive package, the detergents and anti-wear compounds doing the actual protecting, was more than half depleted before it even reached the marketed interval. Here's the part that matters for anyone driving a car built in the last 8 years. Tight clearance GDI engines, which make up the vast majority of vehicles sold after 2016, punish weak additive packages harder than older port-injected designs. There's less margin in the oil film. When that film thins early, upper cylinder wear accelerates in a way that doesn't set a warning light, doesn't make a noise, and doesn't show up until you're looking at a compression test that doesn't make sense. SuperTech meets the floor. It does not approach the ceiling. I've had customers argue with me about this, standing right next to the lab report, because they've been running it for 60,000 miles and nothing happened. That's the trap. Wear doesn't announce itself on a Tuesday morning. It accumulates in silence, and by the time the compression numbers tell you what's been going on, you're already past the point of prevention. Stretching this oil even 500 miles past the printed interval turns a budget decision into an expensive one that you won't even realize you made until the damage is done. At least with SuperTech, you know what you bought from a major retailer. The next oil doesn't even give you that certainty. And by the way, if you think budget oils are the only problem here, wait until we get to number 7. That one's sitting in dealerships right now, and the reason has nothing to do with performance. Coming in at number 10, Amazon Basics Full Synthetic. Nobody can tell you who blends this oil. Amazon contracts production from undisclosed third-party facilities, and the consistency between batches is not something any certification program monitors. I sent 2 bottles purchased 3 months apart to the same independent lab. Same product name, same label, same API stamp. The oxidation resistance differed measurably between them. TBN, which is total base number, the metric that tells you how much acid neutralizing capacity the oil has left, depleted faster in one batch than the other under identical conditions. That's not a minor discrepancy. That's a different oil wearing the same packaging. You can't detect this from the color, the smell, or the way the engine runs in the short term. The variation only surfaces in lab work, and almost nobody sends Amazon Basics out for analysis. In turbocharged engines where thermal stress hammers the oil harder and faster, batch inconsistency compounds because the margin for error is already thinner. The problem here is not that Amazon Basics is necessarily bad oil on any given pour. The problem is that you do not and cannot know what's in the bottle this time versus last time, and by the time you could find out, It's already been circulating inside your engine for months, doing whatever it's going to do. When I buy a quart of oil from a brand that owns its own blending facility, I know the formulation is locked. With Amazon Basics, you're trusting a supply chain optimized for cost efficiency, not formulation consistency, with a fluid that sits between every moving part in your engine. That's a bet most people don't even realize they're making. But here's what really made me angry during this test. The next oil shares its DNA with one of the best performers on this entire list, and still couldn't keep up. What's worse than oil you can't verify? Paying name brand money for protection you're not receiving. At number 9, we have Quaker State Full Synthetic. This one catches people off guard. Quaker State and Pennzoil share the same parent company. They even use Shell's Pure Plus gas-to-liquid base stock. So the natural assumption is reasonable. Same ownership, same base oil, similar quality. The lab results disagreed. Quaker State's additive package is measurably weaker. Wear metals came back higher across the board. Viscosity breakdown occurred faster under thermal stress. Side by side with Pennzoil Ultra Platinum, using what is fundamentally the same base stock. The gap was entirely in the additive chemistry, the compounds that prevent wear, resist oxidation, and keep the oil film intact under load. This matters more than most people realize in engines with variable valve timing. Those systems use oil pressure to operate cam phasers. And when viscosity degrades or additives deplete ahead of schedule, phaser operation gets inconsistent. You hear it as a rattle on cold startup. The dealership blames engine design. Sometimes it's the oil telling you it gave up too early. Same parent company does not mean same product. The price difference exists because of the engineering investment they decided not to make at this tier. And the frustrating part is that most people buying Quaker State assume they're getting Pennzoil adjacent protection at a discount. They're not. They're getting Pennzoil adjacent base stock with a different additive budget, and that budget gap shows up clearly in the lab data. If you're starting to notice how often the real story hides behind a familiar label, that instinct is going to serve you well. Subscribe now, because every oil from here gets more interesting, and the surprises get more expensive to ignore. Number 8 on the list, Havoline Full Synthetic, the Chevron and Texaco brand that almost nobody recommends online. I nearly skipped it because the forums never discuss it. That was a mistake. Havoline posted wear metal numbers that beat several oils costing significantly more. Through 4,500 miles, it was a genuine mid-tier standout that over-delivered against its price point. Then the ceiling appeared. Past that mileage, sludge prevention degraded noticeably around the PCV system and valve cover areas. Detergent capacity dropped off a shelf, not a slope. If you change oil on schedule without exception, Havoline is honest, reliable money well spent. If you're the driver who says, "I'll get to it next weekend," 3 weekends in a row, this oil does not have the reserves to forgive that delay. Engines with known PCV or oil separation issues, including certain Toyota 2.5-liter 4-cylinders and several VW and Audi EA888 variants, show the degradation pattern faster than others. Havoline respects drivers who respect the interval. Push it, and you'll learn exactly where mid-tier performance stops being performance. I had a fleet customer running Havoline in 12 work trucks. The ones that came in on schedule every 5,000 miles ran clean. The 3 that habitually stretched to 6,500 had measurably higher iron in every drain sample. Same oil, same engines, same routes. The only variable was discipline. Havoline tells you exactly who you are as a car owner, and it doesn't lie about the answer. Honest limits are one thing. Marketing language pretending to be engineering is something else entirely. And the next oil is proof that the brand on the front of the bottle and the contract behind the counter are two completely different stories. Landing at number 7, Castrol Edge Advanced Full Synthetic. Walk into almost any dealership service bay in this country, and there's a strong chance they're pouring Castrol Edge. The titanium FST marketing implies superior film strength under extreme loads. Independent tribology data paints a different picture. Under sustained thermal stress, Castrol Edge's protective film degraded faster than competing synthetics at the same price. Varnish buildup and elevated oxidation rates flagged by independent testers were consistent and repeatable across multiple tests. So why is it everywhere in dealerships, bulk pricing contracts, and supply chain agreements? It's a procurement decision dressed up as a technical recommendation. I asked a service manager at a Toyota dealership once, off the record, why they don't stock anything else. His answer was refreshingly blunt. We get Castrol at a price we can't get from anybody else. Nobody's comparing tribology data at the service counter. That honesty should bother you, because the assumption most drivers carry out of the dealership is that whoever built the car also chose the oil. They didn't. The purchasing department did. In turbocharged engines with integrated exhaust manifolds, where sustained oil temperatures run higher than conventional designs, that faster film degradation compounds over time. You won't notice it at the first oil change, or the 5th. You'll notice it around 80,000 miles when the valve train starts telling you a story the marketing language never mentioned. What the dealer recommends and what the dealer negotiated are two very different conversations that happen in two very different rooms. The next oil will frustrate you, because for the first 3,000 miles, it's genuinely one of the best oils you can buy. At number 6, Valvoline Advanced Full Synthetic. Valvoline's molybdenum heavy additive package outperformed more expensive competitors during the first 3,000 miles of the test. Friction reduction was measurable. Wear protection was excellent. Within that window, particularly in engines with older or high-friction valvetrain designs where molybdenum's properties make the biggest difference, it punched well above its price. Then the cliff arrived. Past 4,000 miles, viscosity shear accelerated sharply, and the additive package was largely spent. Not declining. Spent. A modest interval stretch, even a few hundred extra miles, erased the early advantage entirely. I've seen drain samples pulled at 4,500 miles from Valvoline that looked like they came from oil with twice that service life. This is a precision tool for drivers who change on time, every single time, with no flexibility built into the formula. The kind of driver who sets a reminder on their phone and hits the shop within 100 miles of the mark, Valvoline rewards that discipline. The kind of driver who glances at the sticker on the windshield and thinks, "I've got another week," Valvoline has already moved past its protection window and into territory where wear accumulates faster than you'd expect from an oil at this price point. Modern roller follower engines see less dramatic early benefit from the molybdenum, but the cliff at 4,000 miles does not discriminate by engine design. If your oil change schedule slips even once, Valvoline's protection slips faster than almost anything else in this test. Now the countdown crosses into territory that challenges assumptions about premium oil. Everything from here forward costs real money, and you'd expect that money to buy real protection. For one, these oils, it doesn't. The marketing promise is 20,000 miles. The chemistry gave out at 12,000. Stay with me on this one. Sitting at number 5, Mobil 1 Extended Performance. The biggest name in synthetic oil and the boldest marketing claim in the category, 20,000 miles of protection. The test results look strong for a long time. Viscosity held beautifully. Wear metals stayed within range through 15,000 miles. If you stopped the analysis there, you'd call it a winner. Then, the metric that marketing never mentions told the real story. TBN, total base number, the oil's remaining capacity to neutralize harmful acids dropped below the minimum safe operating threshold between 12,000 and 13,000 miles. The oil physically survived past that point. It chemically stopped protecting. Acid accumulation after TBN depletion attacks bearing surfaces, eats its seals, and creates conditions for sludge that don't show up as elevated wear metals in the short term. In GDI engines running, higher fuel dilution rates, and in vehicles with start-stop systems that dramatically increase thermal cycling, TBN drops even faster than the tests showed. The oil still looks clean might be the most dangerous sentence in engine maintenance. Color tells you nothing about chemistry. I've drained oil that looked perfectly golden at 14,000 miles that had a TBN reading so low it was functionally unprotected. I've also drained oil that was dark as coffee at 4,000 miles that still had strong additive reserves. Your eyes cannot perform oil analysis, and the color test that generations of drivers relied on is worthless with modern synthetic formulations. Mobil 1 Extended Performance is a very good oil being marketed as something it is not once you cross 12,000 miles. For drivers who actually change at 7,500 to 10,000 miles, it's a premium product that delivers premium results. For anyone who takes the 20,000-mile promise literally, you're driving on chemistry that quit working thousands of miles before you noticed. The top 3 earned their positions. What separates them is measurable, repeatable, and documented, but don't assume the higher the rank, the better the buy. One of these top 3 has a hidden cost that will shock the enthusiast crowd, and the number 1 oil might not even be the right choice for your car. Coming in at number 4, Pennzoil Ultra Platinum. Shell's gas-to-liquid base stock resists oxidation measurably better than crude-derived Group 3 synthetics. In the test, Pennzoil Ultra Platinum produced the cleanest valve train at standard 5,000-mile intervals. Not the lowest wear metals, not the thickest film, the cleanest internal surfaces. That distinction matters because sludge and varnish are what kill engines slowly, over years, in ways that no single oil change can undo. GTL base stock fights that build up at a molecular level that conventional refinement cannot match. The one trade-off is cold flow behavior. Pour point and sub-zero viscosity, performance slightly lag behind PAO-based formulations. If you park outside overnight in Minnesota or North Dakota winters, there's a brief startup window where a PAO oil handles the initial flow better. For the majority of the country, that difference is irrelevant. In warm climates, daily driving, and standard change intervals, Pennzoil Ultra Platinum delivered the best value-to-protection ratio in the entire test. It earned that spot by doing the work nobody sees, keeping the inside of your engine clean while costing a fraction of the oils above it. I've pulled valve covers off engines running Pennzoil Ultra Platinum for 80,000 miles and seen metal that looked like it could have come from a 20,000-mile car. That kind of internal cleanliness doesn't show up on a dipstick check. It shows up 10 years later when your engine is still running with full compression while someone else's is burning a quart every 2,000 miles because varnish slowly strangled the rings. Clean internals at 5,000 miles is one thing. The real question is what survives when you push the interval to where money actually gets saved or damage gets done. Taking the number 3 spot, Liqui Moly Moligen New Generation. That fluorescent green color is not a marketing gimmick. It's a diagnostic tool. Spill this oil or develop a slow leak, and you can spot it on engine surfaces and undercarriage components instantly. No UV light needed, no dye kits, no guesswork. Every oil reviewer focuses on the pour shot for thumbnail appeal. Almost no one mentions the single most practical advantage Moligen offers for aging vehicles with developing seepage. On the mechanical side, tungsten-based anti-wear additives produced protection numbers that placed it among the top 3 in the test. It carries European OEM approvals, BMULL01, VU502, and 505, that most domestic market oils simply don't hold, making it a strong fit for imported European engines running manufacturer-specific oil requirements. The limitation is straightforward and numerical. Liqui sits at the same per-quart cost as the #1 oil in this countdown, but without offering extended drain capability. Cost per mile of actual protection is significantly higher. For European spec engine owners running standard intervals who need those OEM approvals, it's genuinely excellent. For everyone else, you're paying a premium for performance you could get at a lower per-mile cost from the oil above it on this list. What beats that kind of specialized quality? An oil with a devoted following and a long-term cost nobody in the enthusiast community wants to acknowledge out loud. If you've ever recommended this next oil to a friend, you need to hear what the lab found. At number 2, Royal Purple HPS, High Performance Street. The following is earned and the data supports it. Royal Purple's Cinerlec additive technology creates an ionic bond with metal surfaces that produces anti-wear numbers among the best in any independent test. This is real performance chemistry, not label language. Enthusiasts defend it because the lab results back them up, and they should. Here's the part the forums leave out. ZDDP content, the zinc and phosphorus compounds tuned for maximum anti-wear performance, runs at levels higher than what modern emissions hardware is designed to tolerate over the long haul. Past 100,000 miles, elevated phosphorus exposure accelerates catalytic converter degradation, not sudden failure. Slow poisoning of the catalyst substrate that eventually triggers codes, drops efficiency, and ends with a replacement bill that dwarfs the total cost of every oil change you've ever done on the car. Vehicles with close-coupled converters running at higher exhaust temperatures are more vulnerable than those with underbody-mounted units. For track cars, older engines without catalytic converters, or vehicles you don't plan to keep past 6 figures on the odometer, Royal Purple is a legitimate top-tier choice without reservation. For a daily driver you intend to own for the long haul, the best wear protection in the bottle is quietly building the most expensive repair underneath the car. I've seen catalytic converters on high-mileage vehicles running DDP heavy oil come back with efficiency readings so degraded that the car couldn't pass emissions in any state that tests for it. The owner always says the same thing, but my oil was the best. It was. For the engine, not for the exhaust system that has to live with it for 150,000 miles. That's a trade-off nobody selling this oil is going to bring up, and it's the reason Royal Purple sits at number 2 instead of number 1, despite having some of the strongest raw wear numbers in the entire test. One oil is left. It made a promise no other brand was willing to make, and it was the only one in this entire test that actually kept it, and the number 1 oil in this test. AmSoil Signature Series, 25,000 miles. That's the claimed drain interval printed on the bottle, and that promise is exactly why this oil sat under a microscope harder than any other in the test. At 15,000 miles, viscosity was still solidly in grade. At 20,000 miles, wear metals remained below alarm thresholds. At the full 25,000 miles, TBN was still above the minimum safe operating level. No other oil in this entire comparison came close to that kind of endurance. The PAO and ester-base stock combination resists thermal and oxidative breakdown at a molecular level that Group 3 oils structurally cannot replicate, regardless of how much additive chemistry gets layered on top. This is the objective lab winner, and on the data, it isn't particularly close. Now here's the part that determines whether it belongs in your engine. AmSoil costs 3 to 4 times more per quart than the mid-tier performers in this countdown. It's not stocked at most auto parts stores or big box retailers. And for anyone who already changes oil at standard 5,000-mile intervals, the extended drain capability is money you'll never recoup. you're paying for 25,000 miles of protection and throwing away 20,000 of it. The claimed interval was validated under AMSOIL's specific test protocol, not universally guaranteed for every engine, climate, and driving pattern on the road. The only way to confirm where your personal safe limit actually falls is used oil analysis on your specific vehicle with your driving habits. Best oil and best value are two completely different questions, and the honest truth is that most people watching this are really asking the second one. Match the oil to how you actually drive, how far you actually go between changes, and what your engine actually demands. That's how a mechanic thinks about it. That's the only way the money you spend at the parts counter actually protects something under the hood. If this changed how you think about the oil sitting on your shelf, there's a video on screen right now that goes deeper into what your engine needs at every mileage milestone. I'll see you there.